Jonathan, can you appreciate that the tone of the leaked document may worry people like Chris and Sue and other people who live in Spain at the moment?
Well, I was surprised that Sue said she reacted with disbelief at that document, because there wasn't a great deal in it that surprised me. It talked about the fact that freedom of movement will end when we leave the European Union. That was in both the Conservative and Labour Party manifestos at the election we've just had. It talked about the need for passport checks on people coming in and out of the UK. Again, this is not a great surprise. In terms of citizens' rights, the British government have been trying to get this sorted for months, and I'm afraid it's the European Union who are the ones who are stopping an agreement from happening. The British politicians were last autumn asking Donald Tusk, the European Council president, to find a quick solution to this, with the British government saying they wanted to guarantee the rights for all European Union citizens in the UK in anticipation of the European member states guaranteeing the same reciprocal rights to Brits living abroad. But it was the European Union who turned around and said, no, we're not willing to do it.
But on the issue, Sue Wilson, of what is likely to happen, I think you have actually met with some EU officials and talked to them about possible reactions.
Well, our group is part of British in Europe, which is a coalition of groups across Europe. The British in Europe representatives have met with Barnier and his team, and we had a significant role in putting together, or helping them to put together, the offer that was on the table from the EU with regard to citizens' rights. Now, we've been talking with the Department for exiting the EU as well. But if I could go back to something Jonathan said about the fact that the British government had put an offer on the table, or at least talked about wanting to resolve the issue of citizens' rights last year, there was an issue with that from the EU's point of view, because at that point, Article 50 hadn't been triggered.
But that's the EU's intransigence, not the British government's.
But those are the rules of the EU, and we're still members of the EU. So that was an agreement that no discussions would be had until the UK officially decided to give their notice.
But Sue Wilson, the government has already suggested there'll be a new settled status for EU citizens who arrive before a cut-off date, and that will cover those who've already had 5 years of settled of residency. If that was reciprocated, that would be good news for you, wouldn't it?
But the settled status is inferior to what they have already, and they're asking people who have already registered and become official citizens to do away with that and start all over again from scratch.
So what kind of deal would you be happy with?
We want what the EU are offering us, which is that our rights will not change. I'm not talking about any future arrangements. I'm talking about for those people who have already made their lives either in the UK or in Europe. The EU offer is that everything we have, we should maintain for the rest of our lives. It should be as if Brexit never happened. And we're quite happy with maintaining the status quo.
Jonathan Isaby, you can see why someone in Sue Wilson's position would want to maintain the status that they had and might feel that this was putting it at risk.
I think there's also a problem here that, Sue's organisation, Bremain in Spain, is affiliated to the European movement. She said that what sustains them is a strong belief that Brexit can and will be stopped. Well, no, that's simply not credible. We had a referendum, we voted for Brexit, and I wish that the politicians in this country and the activists in this country who didn't like the result would put their energy into finding the right solutions and the reasonable solutions, rather than trying in some way to reverse the referendum result, which is a fact.
Sue Wilson, that's likely, isn't it? You're not going to reverse Brexit.
Well, I don't think Brexit is inevitable.
Of course
I think there is still room for manoeuvre.
Article 50 is triggered. We leave on March the 29th, 2019, don't we?
That's not guaranteed. I don't accept that that is necessarily the only course of action. There is the option to extend the period to enable negotiations to continue further. There's also the talk of a transitional deal which may leave us in the same position for another 2 to 4 years, depending on which party you talk to. And during all that time, everything would have to be pretty much as it is now. So we might be living in this somewhere between in and out situation for another 4 years at least.
I accept there may be a transition period immediately after March 2019, although it needs to be a time-limited period so that people have certainty of exactly where the final destination is. But even if there's a transition period, we will have left the European Union at the end of March 2019, because that's what the triggering of Article 50 is all about. I think anyone trying to suggest that somehow we're going to stay in the European Union, I'm afraid is in cloud cuckoo land and is not engaging on the same basis of most of the rest of us.
Jonathan Isaby, Sue Wilson, you're not going to agree on that one, I'm quite certain, but thank you both very much indeed.